Okay, it is time for another talking head video where I just rant at you for the duration. It is time, it is well past time, and it is happening before season 2 of The Witcher comes out on Netflix and invalidates a lot of what I want to complain about here. Hey guys, what's up? It's Sizzant here, and today I'd like to have a little chat with you where we talk about the incarnations of the costuming in The Witcher, both in the games, chiefly The Witcher 3, and in the Netflix adaptation. And also probably use the word historical a lot to refer to a strictly fantastical setting. Alright, let's go ahead and get the good out of the way. I love the Cintron full plate harness, not just because it's shiny and pretty and includes armor for the neck, which is the most chronically under-armored part of the body in film and TV. It appears to have been inspired by 16th century full plate harnesses, and honestly, who doesn't love gargantuan pauldrons and a strong central ridgeline down the front of a breastplate? This is the quintessential fantasy turtled up in plate that in the game is more reflected by the armors that you see worn by the Knights of Toussaint and Nilfgaard, but we'll get to that. Incidentally, did you notice that the Netflix show has regional fashion choices? It appears to be the Cintron style that buttons down the front of your garment are tied in groups of 3. And when I noticed that this was the case, I was 1, very impressed at the level of detail, and 2, very quick to puff out my chest and feel like a very clever boy. And I think that that's something that's missed a little bit in the discussion surrounding media. The audience feeling like that, not specifically me. Although if you do want to discuss how much of a very clever boy I am, I'm not going to stop you. Whether it's purely fantasy or a historical series, having little details that are just there to be discovered by the audience and make the people who discover them feel very clever is a great design decision, because everyone likes to feel clever. It fuels discussion about the media in general, which helps to cement its place in pop culture. I promised myself at this point that I wouldn't speak about Hamilton's silhouette or elbow darts because they've been done to death and I really don't know what I'm talking about. Also good, the costumes for the magic users! Ticia de Vraze's outfits show a woman of means who is regimented and poised, and because she doesn't have a character arc so much to speak of, her outfits remain largely unchanged, which again goes to reinforce that character's unwavering nature. Absolute bae. Yen lets us see a character arc communicated through costume, as well as communicated through like the character arc, but we're here specifically to talk about costume, so let's carry on. Starting off in shit-covered peasant rags, moving into the uniform worn by a student of Aretusa, and finally into the most powerful magical wielder in the world, a woman who can wear whatever she wants, and I will just take one quick moment here to complain about the rope dress. Why? Yen in the games undergoes a completely different character arc. They're set chronologically a long time after the Netflix series, and in the games doesn't actually change the costume much at all, but I feel like it does a good job of communicating that A, Yen dresses how she damn well pleases, B, she has a taste for the finer things in life, and C, she is generally a person who is more practically minded. Plus, she has a white blouse, and that is accurate to the book, so the video game gets a gold star from me. I will just quickly make the point that if we're being good little experimental archaeologists, experimental fantasists? That doesn't sound right. And we refer to our primary sources. The sorceresses in the Netflix adaptation kind of do dress really conservatively. But then again, the book does draw a lot of attention to how frequently and with what gusto the sorceresses get their collective tits out, so I feel like we can agree that this is a good change for the adaptation to a different medium. Not that the show, or indeed the game, have any shortage of costume that is just there to show off some capital knockers. Jaskier, aka Dandelion, aka Julian Alfred Pankratz, also has some excellent costumes befitting an excellent character that seem to be reasonably closely inspired by doublets from the 15th and 16th century. And I don't really have much else to say about those costumes except for god damn! Even generally speaking, the social status of each individual character is clearly communicated by their costume, which is important for a show like this. It's immediately obvious from first glance whether someone is a peasant, or is a noble, or is a wild person living on the fringes of society in a magical forest that Ciri kind of wanders into and meanders about for a little bit, because changes in the plot structure when the adaptation moved from the books necessitated Ciri kind of meandering aimlessly and killing time. Now, you might notice that I haven't mentioned Geralt's outfits until now, and if you haven't noticed, then I hope that whatever crafting project you're working on is going well, and I'm very flattered that you've put me on as background noise. But the reason that I have waited until now is because I'm gonna go ahead and put Geralt's outfits into... I have 2 main issues with Geralt's armor, and neither of them have to do with historical accuracy or inspiration. Issue the first has us circling back around to our primary sources. In the books, Geralt hates armor. Like, really hates it quite a bit, and he isn't shy about letting people know his opinions regarding armor. In fact, I will say that this is something that The Witcher 3 got mostly wrong. In the books, the heaviest piece of armor that Geralt is seen wearing is a jacket with silver spikes on the sleeve, which, let's be clear, is a look. Issue the second has to do with a direct contrast to said game that I was just berating for not getting it right, and a central facet of the mythos surrounding witches. They are a solitary people, they're shunned by most of society, and the largest part of company that they normally keep is their horse. They hunt alone. They live alone. They walk the path alone. What implications does this have for costume? They get dressed alone. Having actually made almost 2 sets of armor from the game thus far, I can tell you as an experimental fantasist that these armors were designed to be put on alone without help of a squire or a page, and I refuse to believe that that is coincidence. Look at the other non-Witcher armors from the game. These require assistance, a squire to put on your pauldrons, a fellow witch hunter to buckle up the rear of your harness, or just some help to do up your many belts if you are a Skelliger. So the armor that Geralt is depicted as wearing in the Netflix series is actually kind of historical in the sense that studded leather is just a confused modernization of a brigandine. No, I don't have time to go into that. Or a coat of plates. Seriously, I'm not the one that you want explaining this to you anyway. And Geralt's particular chest piece seems to be very closely inspired by the Visby coats of plates. Why are you listening to me instead of a historian? So even leaving aside the gigantic movement restricting pauldrons, which are based on the silhouette of the main armor from the game, which I don't believe were ever meant to be solid planks, because if you look at the promotional cinematics that came out before the game did, you can see that they're much softer and freer moving, more like chainmail versions of regular pauldrons. So even leaving all of that aside, his main chest covering can't be put on without help, and that kind of kills the Witcher mythos a little bit for me. And speaking of weird modernizations of leather armor, would any video about the costumes in The Witcher be complete without taking a chance to dunk on the Nilfgaardian armor? Now, to be clear, the showrunner Lauren Hissrich has explained the design decisions that went into creating the Nilfgaardian armor as wanting to show an army that is, and I quote, ragtag, born of necessity, and without glamour or means. And she wanted to leave room for a story arc about Nilfgaard becoming a better equipped and more impressive power. All that being said, I can't help but feel that they would have appeared more ragtag if they were shown as being, well, ragtag, and composed of incongruous elements. What we are shown instead is a Nilfgaardian army that has decided that the uniform for every single soldier is poorly shrink-wrapped leather, I guess? Look, I know that this joke has been done to death, but I'm just honestly not even sure what the armor is even meant to be. This series does have the age-old problem of all armor being kind of ineffective against swords, which is kind of necessary for a sword-wielding protagonist to get anything done, so that's forgivable in my opinion. But I don't know, this just seems kind of like a worse look than a bunch of guys wearing like tarred gambesons and like old chainmail and shit. It is difficult to compare this directly to the armors shown in The Witcher 3 because of that story arc that Lauren Hissrich was talking about, and what I mentioned earlier. The game takes place a long time after the Netflix series, where Nilfgaard is a firmly established, immense world power, not when they were making their go at it. The Nilfgaardian army is much larger and much more well-equipped, much wealthier, and so of course they're wearing black plate armor that has beautiful gold trim, etc, etc, etc. But it really must be said that in terms of reflecting those all-important primary documents, The Witcher 3 really did a fantastic job. The Nilfgaardians wear black armor that is uniform enough to be recognized as all belonging to the same army, but it's still different enough from soldier to soldier to be believable, all while making sure that the higher-ranking characters have a nicer kit than their foot soldiers. And by interpreting winged helmets into something that is both visually distinctive and intimidating. Okay, when I say intimidating, pretend that you are a member of the poor fucking Redanian infantry and not some kind of magical amphetamine-fueled monster slayer. What then shall we say by way of conclusion? That adapting one medium, a book, into 2 separate and totally different mediums done by totally different teams under totally different creative leads to totally different readings of that all-important primary documentation? No, it can't be as simple as that. I think that in their own ways, both The Witcher 3 and the Netflix adaptation of The Witcher were superb adaptations of a book series that I really enjoyed. I think that it's unfair to all involved to pretend that either of them are a perfect adaptation, because I put it to you that a perfect adaptation doesn't exist. of anything. When you move from one medium to another, things are going to be lost in translation. And when you move from a non-visual medium to a visual medium, people are going to make design decisions to try and communicate something to you as the audience without needing to actually have characters talk about it. There is so much information that is conveyed to the audience just through the use of costume, character archetype, trite little things that when you really zoom in on them can get annoying and repetitive. But as the audience, it's very important that the showrunner doesn't waste any time in a 40... Hang on, how long are the episodes? It's really important that the showrunner doesn't waste 10 minutes out of an hour episode to try and tell you something that you can just infer if they put a costume on someone. And so, of course, things are gonna fall through the cracks. At any rate, thank you for joining me on this exploration of two different fantasy interpretations of one different fantasy text. This has been a lot of fun to do, and when my friend mentioned to me that Fandom February was going to be a thing, I had to think for all of a quarter of a second before I thought to myself of which fandom I am most into. And if you are into The Witcher as well and you are new here, please do feel free to check out the other videos on this channel. I swear to God, most of them I'm actually doing something and not just babbling into the microphone for however many minutes this goddamn video has gone on for. I make Witcher outfits out of leather and linen and things that they would really have been made out of in the series. So if you're into that kind of experimental fantasism, please do feel free to stick around, check out my other videos, and stay tuned for more videos of me making manticore armor. You guys take it easy, and I'll catch you next time.